I want to welcome everyone to today's session. I'm really excited about this one because we've got a set of real practitioners. And these are folks who work the job of business process automation in ServiceNow on a daily basis. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is the practical experience that they can bring to the conversation. So what I'm going to do is introduce each of the panelists here today. My job as David Mainville is to basically moderate the conversation and to keep things moving forward. But the real thought leaders here are these practitioners. So I'll start with Jeremy Hoffman. Jeremy is a systems engineer and process design person with ChristianaCare. We also have Ericka Rivera. She's the IT strategic planning and transformation analyst at Knights of Columbia. And Sarah Beardsley, ITM analyst from Yale University. So what I'm going to do is turn it over to each of you to give a brief introduction of yourself and to the company that you represent, starting with Jeremy.
Thank you. So my name is Jeremy Hoffman. I am a senior systems engineer, process architect, pretty much focused with ServiceNow, and work with all of our business stakeholders for all the processes that we have within ServiceNow, which is it's pretty much all of IT service management, service portfolio management, case management, and then Novolo from facilities and clinical engineering. And I work with all the stakeholders from that standpoint related to the process and process automation, process improvement, whole nine yards. So ChristianaCare is a healthcare organization based out of California, Delaware. I wish we were in California. No, we're based out of Delaware. Pretty large healthcare organization. We're one of the largest private employers within the state of Delaware. We have caregivers that reside in the tri-state, quad-state area, Delaware, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Maryland. And with the onset of COVID, we've actually expanded our caregivers to be more remote and throughout the U.S. From that standpoint. We are Delaware's only level 3 neonatal intensive care unit. We have where we experience over 7,100 births every year. We have, like I said, more than 10,000 employees, and that's just the employees. That doesn't include our student-based population, which is pretty huge because ChristianaCare is a very well-known teaching organization within the healthcare system. With that, back to you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Now I'll turn it over to Ericka. Ericka.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. So again, my name is Ericka Rivera, and I work for the Knights of Columbus. I am the IT strategic planning and transformation analyst. I work very closely with our senior leadership team involved with the IT strategy and improving our IT capabilities. One of our strategic goals, right, within our digital transformation is to enhance our technologies and processes. And with doing that, one of our initiatives that we have in flight is implementation of ServiceNow. So automation is definitely, right, a big deal for our organization as we move from, right, legacy and manual processes over to, right, best practice and automation and streamlining, right, our processes so we can be more effective in delivering value to our customers. So again, I've been here for 14 years and very happy to be here. So the Knights of Columbus was founded by Father McGivney, right, in 1982. In 1882, started off as a small mutual aid society, really created to care, right, for widows and orphans. And today, right, about 145 years later, we strive, right, to maintain his mission, right, to empower Catholic men to live in their faith and serve their families, their parishes, and their communities. So we offer right, faith information and evangelization practices to our members. We also offer mutual aid and financial security through our charities and products. So you'll see here that our organization has donated, right, over 185 million in charity, and some of our right charitable efforts include, right, supporting disaster relief, right, supporting our citizens in Ukraine, and supporting our right Christian refugee relief funds, and right, supporting them in any way that we can. So with that, right, we are international. We're from, right, all the way from Asia to Europe, and we have over 16,000 councils, including over 300 college councils. So we also support our college members with, supporting them with scholarship funds and other type of support that we give our members. So um, that's about it for the Knights of Columbus, and thank you for having us here.
Well, thank you. And Sarah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. I am Sarah Beardsley. I have recently been appointed ITSM program manager. I know that my bio says something different because it's very recent. I own the ITSM core processes, and that includes incident change, all the modules in ServiceNow. We use ServiceNow as a tool, as well as Navvia. We are aligned to the ServiceNow tool. So my vertical is IT service management, and then we have the tool vertical, and recently we now have the vertical of the help desk. So that is going to help mature our processes because we've been aligned with the help desk now. So that's going to feed a lot of improvements into our core processes. As I said, I work for Yale University. I've been with Yale for just about 4 years. I was brought in actually to stand up those core processes because that was my background. And now we're just at the tail end of that, and we're moving to a state of continuous improvement for each of those processes. Yale University is, it's hard to talk about Yale because most people have heard about it. I mean, I always go back to our core mission, which is that we're committed to improving the world around us now and for future generations. And that's also IT's mission, is to support that. That's what we do. And the way I do that personally is supporting it by implementing these processes that streamline and make it easier for people to get things done so they can go out there and make that change in the world. So that's why I'm here. That's why I work for Yale. And I guess that's it.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. And just before we get started, once again, my name is David Mainville. I'm one of the co-founders of Navvia. Been in the ITSM space for quite a number of years. We used to be a consultancy. When Navvia first started back in 1999, we were a consultancy that focused on helping to optimize and implement processes on various automation platforms. During that time, we came up with a product, the Navvia Process Designer, which we used internally to help improve the productivity of our business analysts who were designing processes, implementing processes. So fast forward a number of years, we've left the consulting business behind, and now we're focused 100% on commercializing our product, to distributing our product and supporting our clients. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about us, you can go to navvia.com, and you can also check out our reviews on g2.com, which is a peer-to-peer software review site. So what I'm going to do now is just to set the stage a little bit, set the table. I'm going to talk about what is business process automation. So business process automation is the use of technology, and it's to really designed to automate routine tasks, things that normally would be done through call center agents or other things, and automate those things so that you can actually improve productivity and save money. This is often done through robotic process automation software, workflow management solutions like ServiceNow, and other business intelligence software. Now, the key steps of business process automation And there's 5 of them. And they starts with identifying your automation opportunities, defining your processes. Once you have your processes understood, identifying what the automation requirements are for those processes, implementing that automation, and then monitoring and continuous improvement. And the reason I laid out these 5 steps is quite often people just focus right in on the automation piece without doing the front and back end work of identifying what the processes are and the continual improvement. But to really do this effectively, it's a continual process of identifying opportunities through to improvement and just always looking at new opportunities. The other thing about business process automation, it's really a core component of digital transformation initiatives, which are very, much in demand these days, or a very hot topic these days, is the transformation of organizations to make them more effective and efficient. If you want to learn more about business process automation, we have a few great blog posts on our site, and you can check out the one that's linked here below when you get the copy of the slides later today. Also, what I'd like to do is just start off by getting to know our audience a little bit better. And to do that, I have a little poll that we're going to put out just to get a sense of where your organization is in terms of business process automation. So, Catherine, if you wouldn't mind launching that poll. So let's just take a moment or two, take a look at the answers. So first of all, the question is, how would you assess the effectiveness of your business process automation initiatives in respects to the whole topic of requirements gathering? So do you have a standardized approach? Does every team kind of have their own way of doing it, and effectiveness varies from one group to another? Is there a standard approach everyone uses? Is there a standard approach that is basically governed, measured, and managed? And finally, do you have an approach that's always, you're always looking to improve and make it better? For those of you that notice, this is sort of the 5 levels of the capability maturity model, and sort of conforms to that. So I see we have most of the respondents. I'll just give it another 10 seconds or so. So if you go ahead and just finalize your responses, I think that's good. We can share what we have here. So taking a look at this is interesting. So taking a look at the people who responded, the largest segment is each team has its own way of doing things and the effectiveness varies. The second largest contingent is the no standardized approach, or no structured approach. A small percentage of you, it looks like 6%, says there's a standard approach used across all groups. And about 8% says there's a standard approach that is measured and managed. And about 11% says the approach is measured, managed with a focus on continual improvement. But the bulk of the people seem to be in those first 2 categories, no standardized approach, and each team has its own way of doing things. The importance of kind of embracing, a structured approach to business process automation is, it's just how effective you're going to be. If you implement a bad process poorly, you're just going to have bad results more efficiently. Does that even make sense? But what I'm saying is, if you automate bad process and you have bad requirements, your result is going to demonstrate that, and you're really not going to get the benefits that you're looking for. So anyway, let's jump into today's presentation. The way we're going to structure it is more of a panel discussion and more of a conversation. I'll start with a question, and I'll let each of the panelists provide some insight and some feedback on that question. So we'll go into the first one. So this is really important. One of the things that is important in any business process automation initiative is to really engage those stakeholders, the folks who have the requirements to be automated. So how do you, as a group, each and every one of you, how do you go about identifying, prioritizing opportunities for improvement in your organization? And maybe what I'll do is I'll just start with Sarah on this one.
So we have to sort of take a step back to how we engage our business stakeholders. Based on that poll answer, I can identify with most of the folks on this call, because when I walked in the door at Yale, we were at the stage where each team was doing their own thing. Everybody on their team was doing the same thing, but not all the teams together were doing the same thing. So the way we've we've stood up our processes. We went back, the key was determining like what was the process, the as is. And then we took the as is, the different ones, and we made them into like our highway, our streamlined process. And now that we've done that, part of that process identification was identifying all of our stakeholders. So in that process, we identified our stakeholders. And now we have governance groups with, whatever the cadence is, depending on the group, with regular cadences set up that continuously engage our stakeholders so that they're constantly identifying ways of improvement. And we use the ServiceNow tool to track those improvement things. And then we bundle them together, and we do them in intervals of usually quarterly, at whatever we can do. So that's really how we engage with our business stakeholders. I would say most of the engagement happens through those governance groups, because the stakeholders are part of the governance groups. And then when we go beyond that, we also we have a robot. Our services are completely set up, so we're service driven. We're not application driven. So our service owners also have conversations with the business stakeholders and bring that information back into those governance groups. So that's the way we're handling it right now. And that's how we're identifying opportunities for improvement and automation.
So very much a business relationship management function. Could you also look at it that way?
It is, yes. That function in a university setting, they don't seem to have that lingo where at Yale, like, of business relationship, but it's exactly what it is. So it's exactly what I came from, because I came from corporate. That's what that was, business relationship management. Yes. So yes.
Thank you.
It's funny to hear that, because I haven't heard it in a while.
How about you, Ericka, from Knights of Columbus?
Yeah, so from a Knights of Columbus perspective, right, we're in a different situation, because our maturity when it comes to, right, process standardization, process documentation, we're very immature in that space, right? And which is why we're going through a digital transformation, right, to improve that and to improve our current processes. So what we ended up realizing fairly quickly when we started when we were preparing for ServiceNow implementation was that when we started looking at the processes that we were actually going to be, right, working, right, and our ITSM processes, our strategic portfolio processes, we started looking at our current state, we quickly identified that we had no documentation. We had no clearly defined roles and responsibilities, which is, something very beneficial that we've been able to leverage Navvia for. But the way that we're leveraging, right, even right, Navvia to help us identify, right, those priorities is by, again, right, making sure that we define the roles and the key stakeholders that are involved in the process, whether it be cross-functionally, whether it just be right within the process, and we bring them together and we start utilizing, right, best practice out of Navvia and saying, this is what good looks like. This is what it's, what we want our processes to look like. Let's walk through this and start identifying where we are not aligned, right, with best practice. And once we identify those pain points, we're able to, right, prioritize those depending on what the operational impact would be, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically been our approach, and Navvia has definitely played a big role in setting that foundation as to how, right, our processes should look, right, and who we should be involving at what point.
I find it interesting, been around the block, obviously, and how often people jump into an automation requirement, jumping straight to a form and saying, okay, what do you want this form to look like? Without the broader involvement of the different stakeholders, understanding the rules, who gets notified when the form is submitted, and what the workflow looks like. and basically just jumping right into automating. And it sounds like you're really taking a great approach by, starting with the process.
Yeah, the last thing we want to do is configure a process that's not based off of best practice, right? And reinvent, right, the wheel that we, the challenges that we suffered from in the past. So definitely.
And quite often, when people start that way, they'll just be they'll be configuring it based on their previous tool or the other, the last way
Yeah.
they did it. So they're really not taking the opportunity to improve things. They're just we call that a lift and shift, lift from one tool into
Yes.
another without really evaluating what it is you're doing. How about you, Jeremy?
Exactly.
And thanks, Ericka. How about you, Jeremy?
Yeah. So I can really relate to the 44% of the people that said that they're number two. Each team is on their own and effectiveness varies. We're pretty much in that same boat. From a ServiceNow standpoint, we are pretty good. We're really good with being able to identify who our stakeholders are for certain processes, whether it's IT service management related, it's HR case management, it's Navvia with facilities, clinical engineering, so on and so forth. And we're really good honed in with being able to identify those stakeholders, process owners, process managers, the users of the system from that aspect. And having the one key thing that we do differently than other areas outside of the ServiceNow team is we use Navvia to really document the process. And we use all the stakeholders, the process manager, process owner, their delegates, and sometimes we reach out to, I'll say from a business standpoint, it's more of the users of this environment. So from the facilities, it'd be like the technicians, same with clinical engineering, and within IT, it's the users of the platform from a fulfiller standpoint. And we really try to understand how they use the platform, what works well for them, and everything. And then we start with Navvia to document what that process looks like. Having pre-built templates, workflows out there, whether it's ITIL related or it's ServiceNow related, that you can just import and go from there. It does allow you that kind of lift and shift mentality, but it also allows that best practice, like, hey, how's everything working? Here's what the best practice is, but here's what we do, designing for the 80%. And working with those stakeholders really helps understand what we need to look at from a process standpoint, and where can we make improvements, what can we eliminate, where can we create automation, and stuff like that. I may make it sound like it's all roses for us. I'll give you an example. We just went live with a command center app. We had a pretty large go live with a hospital we just purchased. Actually, last week, we're coming out of the first week of the go live, and using App Engine Studio, we built a command center application for our rounders, our caregivers, to be able to support go live issues. We call them early life support, the ITIL terminology for that development to full support transition. And we did everything right in terms of meeting with the stakeholders, gathering the requirements and everything, but we didn't start in Navvia. It's like I didn't start documenting everything in Navvia until last week, 2 weeks ago. But now everything is in Navvia. We have it all documented. So when we go back in 3 or 4 months, fill in the blank, to be able to review the process to see what changes we need to make, maybe for the next go live that we're going to be using it, it's all documented there. So there are times that we kind of falter and just forget about, documenting that up front. But documentation is one thing. Following the practice of engaging the stakeholders, gathering the requirements, always asking the why versus, and understanding the problem trying to be solved versus, I want it to do this, make it do this type of thing.
It's
big.
When you remind me of user stories, like a user story is always supposed to be articulated in the form of, as a persona, as a user, as a manager, as a stakeholder. I need something for a benefit, right? And And I start looking at some of the user stories that people have written for ServiceNow implementations. And they're saying, as a user, I need this feature activated in the tool. And they're not even based on real needs or benefits. They're just based on functionality. And I think we got to get ourselves out of that functionality mindset more to like, what are the objectives that you're trying to achieve and the outcomes that you want to achieve, and look at those. So this is a really important piece, is engaging the business stakeholders, because it's the stakeholders we're doing all the automation for. And if they're not involved, how are you going to give them what they need? We talked a little bit about, sorry, did someone have a follow-up there? All right. We were talking a little bit about process, and that's a good segue into the next piece here, about the importance of having well-defined processes. I like to say it's very difficult to automate something if you don't understand what it is. And process really, there's a lot of terminology these days. There's customer journey maps, and there's, requirements, but process is the ultimate customer journey map. A good process identifies the roles and responsibilities and the steps each of those people follow from beginning of the process to the end. It's the ultimate customer journey map. And I find it's, understanding that customer's journey is the best way to achieve effective automation. So we already touched upon this subject a little bit, but let's go back to it for a moment. So maybe I'll start with Ericka this time. What importance does your organization now place on process identification, mapping, and optimization in respect to this whole automation initiative?
Yeah, so we place a very, it is very important, right, to have our processes defined. And again, I'll go back right to our ServiceNow implementation, and not the challenges that we face not having our processes documented, and not understanding who is involved and who's responsible, and not being able to hold anyone accountable, right, to certain parts of the process is it's critical, right? So what we actually and what we have done is, because I know you mentioned, David, the customer journey mapping, right? That's actually one thing that we have been leveraging now, is not only understanding the customer journey, but understanding the customer journey from cross-functionally, right? And how that impacts other areas within the organization, right? And where we tie it back in Navvia is that inter-process relationship, right? Which is critical, right? Understanding, if a process, right, has a touch point right here, right, making sure that it's documented on the other process that it's connecting to, yeah. So it's definitely very, very important to have them. And even as we move, into configuring, because we're still very in the early stages of configuring our processes in ServiceNow. So as we move forward and we continue to learn lessons from our past experiences, right? One thing we don't want to do is, go live with a process and then have our customer reach out to us at some point and say, yeah, this is not, I don't understand this, or why is the process doing this, or why am I being notified, and why is that person not being notified, right? So having the process documented and mapping that from end to end is critical to making sure that, right, that we're ultimately providing the value to our customers, because they're the ones, right, getting the value out of the process.
Exactly.
So
thank you. Sarah, how about you?
Well, I agree with everything that was just said. And then, yes, there's a huge importance on having well-defined processes. And I always go back to two things. One is you can't approve upon something if you don't know what it is. That being key, you have to kind of one of the methodologies is always start where you are. So you have to understand where you are and how that process is defined in order to to move it along, to mature it. So it's key. And then the second part is the part about knowing the players, like exactly, what was just articulated. You have to know who those stakeholders are. You have to know, who's doing what in order to find the places where you can make those improvements. And then another thing I would bring up is, if you don't have a well-defined process, then how do you measure these things? You can't measure something without a baseline, right? So your process, your well-defined process is your baseline for measuring like how you're going to, improve. So yeah, that's our
Well said.
thanks.
Before I go over to Jeremy, I just wanted, I don't know if any of you have heard of a process modeling technique called LOVEM, line of visibility modeling. So the interesting thing, it really ties into what you folks have been saying here. Line of visibility modeling, so it uses swim lanes. So most of you probably know what swim lanes are in a process. So each lane represents a role. But one of the things line of visibility modeling does is it puts the business stakeholders on the top lane. So as you go across the process, you see every interaction with your business stakeholders. It makes it, and then on the bottom lane, you put every interaction with the tool. So you have your help desk manager, your user, whatever the roles are in the middle. On top, you have the key users, and on the bottom, you have the systems. What I'll get Catherine to do is put a link to a little article we wrote on LOVEM in the email we'll be sending out later today. But it's a great technique for modeling things from the perspective of the business user. So Jeremy, how about you?
Yeah, process documentation is key for us. Like I said, we missed it. I missed it for the Command Center app, but having it documented allows, kind of echoing what Ericka and Sarah said, is it allows you to kind of go back and in the future, 3 months, 6 months, a year from now, to understand why and how things work. Because processes can be very expansive, that through continual service improvement, maybe you're focusing on a certain activity within that process. You're not focusing on the whole entire process as a whole, but just maybe focusing on a particular activity, like maybe parts ordering or bringing in a new asset, for example, onboarding an asset, or fill in the blank. So being able to go back and see that process and see all the different tasks within that particular activity, see the roles, see the work instructions, see the requirements, answer that why are we doing it this way, really allows you to see it and understand it, and then question the why and ask, is there a better way to be doing it today? Whether it's, is this stuff still valid? Are these tasks still valid? Or is there a way for automation and eliminate the waste, and even eliminate the manual steps by creating that automation? So to me, having that process document there is key. I find myself going back to it at least once a week to answer questions of our stakeholders. And also during process improvement meetings, going out to it and looking at it. So that's where the importance is for us.
Thank you. Catherine, are there any questions that have come in at this point? I have that we need to.
Yes, we do have one. So we have one from Dawn, and it asks, do you seek to optimize before automate?
Do you seek to
Optimize. Yeah, optimize before automate.
So does anyone want to? So that's a really good point. So how important is the optimization piece before you tackle automation? Does anyone want to grab that one?
This is Sarah. The answer is absolutely yes. So in that process of getting the as is and converting that to a process that everyone can follow, when, in Yale's journey, that was the initial goal, was to optimize the processes without automation. I mean, we put automation in where we could, but that was not our overall goal. Our overall goal was basically get everybody to do things the same way first. Then Now our focus is more on automation. So absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would
I
I would agree
100%.
with that because, yes, sorry, Erica. Why automate something that's not being used, or that's wasteful? I mean, you're spending the time to build automation, being able to optimize it and eliminate waste, make sure that all your steps are being truly used and provide value, then look for ways to automate.
I'm just looking on the board here, and there's a really interesting comment question that's come up, and it's one I've heard many, many times before. I apologize, I'm just staring at another screen here. But so this person is saying, and I believe it's Shrivas. Shrivas is saying, it's great. We as process people definitely recognize the importance of process and how significant it is, but inevitably, my clients see it as overhead. The clients see the process as overhead, something that actually slows down their regular working capability. And I have the hardest time selling the importance of process and hence the time required to build a stable, robust process for any task. I mean, that's not the first time I've heard this. How about you folks?
Yeah.
No, that
Yeah,
sorry, I'll let you go. Jeremy.
Nope, go ahead, Erica. I over talked to you last time. You go now.
Thank you.
It looks like we're getting, by the way, it looks like we're getting a good reaction. There's lots of people I think agree with this comment. So go ahead, Erica.
No, this one definitely hits home because being an immature organization when it comes to process documentation, process standardization, even process design, now that we're trying to implement that, right, and we're trying to push that, the main reaction that we've got from our internal, right, from our process owners, process managers, is the same, right? This is a lot, right? Why are we documenting this to this extent when, right, it can be changed, or who's going to really read, right, this process, and who's going to really go back, right, and reference this process, because they don't appreciate, right, the importance of having a well-defined process. But as we move, from, as we continue to push that, right, we've started to get a different appreciation from our process owners and process managers and those, engaged in our process documentation and design, because without having that visibility into those steps and everything that process entails, how are we going to be able to even optimize, right, or even improve anything, right, to begin with? So we started off, right, having that resistance, and as we continue to move forward and we continue to push, we are starting to get acceptance from our stakeholders, which is, it's definitely a win for us.
And sometimes I think it's the approach that the process team takes. You don't have to like, bury people in everyone in documentation. Every different stakeholders has different needs and requirements. For many people, a high-level process flow or a SIPOC diagram lays out the process succinctly enough for them. But for someone who's going to automate, you need a step-by-step requirements for each step in the process. For people who have to execute tasks, they need to know their roles and responsibilities. So you can build different types of documentation for different audiences, some for training, some for communication, others for actually design work. And
that's what we've actually we have done. We've used the document profile section in Navvia to basically tailor that depending on who our audience is, right? So we have a simplified version for training versus a more detailed version for when we're doing, right, the customer journey mapping, or even understanding, right, where we can, have opportunities for automation. So yeah, right on, Dave.
And I like something that Jeremy said before, and I'm paraphrasing, but like starting with the why, I think is what Jeremy was saying earlier. You always have to start with why are you doing this? And once the stakeholders understand why, and also they understand you're trying to solve their problem, process becomes less of a burden and more of a pathway to get them what they need. So you gotta turn this process thing around from just like a bunch of documentation to the solving of a business problem and making things actually easier for people. I saw another, oh, I just saw a comment. I agree with Ericka, but the issue with consultants, like many of us, is time is the one thing we don't have. But I agree, it's something that needs to be wear people out with positive perseverance. And I'm sorry, I'm squinting. The screen with the questions is a little smaller than I thought. So it basically, and I guess it's really tough if you're a consultant in an organization, it can sometimes be tough, especially if the organization doesn't see the value. And that's why organizational change management is such an important component of anything. You know, we did an analysis and wrote a little article on it in our blog post. So I looked at a whole bunch of different reasons why digital transformation fails. And of course, I have my own experience. I've been in the ITSM industry for over 40 years. And one of the main reasons digital transformation initiatives fail is the lack of requirements and the lack of a process, because people focus on the automation and the implementation, and what comes out the end isn't something that gives them any additional value. So they might think they're saving time right now, but in the end, they're going to say, I'm unhappy with this. And they're either going to blame the consulting company or they're going to blame the tool, but they're not going to blame themselves. And it's really important to start with the process, because that's the way you're going to deliver the best outcomes. Anyway,
David, if I could make a quick comment on just these two questions. So I just literally within the last year and a half, maybe 3 years now, because we started it pre-COVID and COVID was here about 3 years. Our clinical engineering director, who is basically our stakeholder for the clinical asset management, he was one of those stakeholders that was just completely against process documentation. He didn't see the importance of it. He didn't see the value in it or anything. And I have a really good relationship with him. So I was able to work the trust, and I was able to work that based off of asking questions like, okay, how does tech A do this? How does tech B do this? How does purchaser one do this? So on and so forth. And his answers were, well, it's a mixed bag. You know, so-and-so does it this way. The other person does it this way. Okay, well, do you have repeatable results? Like accurate, repeatable results? Nope, we have this problem or we have that problem. So I was able to convince him just by asking those kind of questions, because when you have a defined process, you should have the same outcome over and over again, repeatable. No questions asked. And when you don't have that repeated outcome, it's a variation, and it causes failures potentially or anomalies and stuff like that. Since then, we've actually spent time documenting his parts process, and specifically to the ordering of parts. And he's now working on building reports to look at where there's issues within the parts ordering process. Maybe a tech orders a part or creates a draft of a part order, but never submits it. And he's working on this, and he's like, can you help me out here? And this literally just happened over the last couple of days. Can you help me out here? I went out to Navvia to refresh my memory on the parts ordering process, and basically said, well, here's what we're finding, that there's a purchaser going in and manually moving the state versus using the UI action buttons. And it's causing ripple effects in the process. They need to be using the UI actions. If we didn't have that documented, there's no way I'd be able to identify issues with the reports or anything like that. He's since been one of the biggest proponents to documenting processes. And when I actually use him, AKA as a reference, when it goes to other stakeholders, if the conversation comes up like, oh, we don't have the time to do the documentation, I'll do the documentation, just work with me to understand what the process is, and then I'll bring it back to you. And then I use him as the kind of the reference to say, yep, you need to do it. Here's why. Here's a real life example. So I think once.
Oh, sorry.
Nope. I think once you get that one person on board, it really could be a domino effect to elicit that organizational change in process documentation and the importance of it.
No, you brought up, those are really, really important points. And, basically would you build a house without a blueprint? And how can you automate a process if you don't know what it is? And then people just don't see that connection, right? You can't automate something you don't understand. So you really need to have these blueprints in place. So the next piece is process is great, but actually the rubber has to meet the road, and that usually is in the form of requirements. So what is this form going to look like? Who gets notified? How do you guys go about gathering requirements in your organization? And maybe I'll start with Sarah on this one. Do you use user stories? What kind of things do you use to gather the actual technical requirements and functional requirements?
Well, Dave, you have some insight into this, don't you?
Were we talking about that yesterday?
Yeah. So this is a part of our process that's a bit immature. So the intake is well defined. So we use ServiceNow for the intake. We use the agile demand modules for work to come in. But when we're defining the requirements, that's where we're a bit archaic. We use spreadsheets and a Word doc, and we're actually very early in our journey of improving that. And so what we've done is we've gone to Dave. We've said we want to start not only storing all of our requirements in Navvia, but writing our requirements in Navvia. So this is an initiative for us that's going on right now. That's actually literally just started at the beginning of this month. And we're going to try to not only define any new requirements, we're going to try to get all of our requirements in the same spot, because one of the challenges, one of the biggest challenges for me walking in the door was that there was no like master copy of any of our core module requirements. Like they were here and there and everywhere. And so when you wanted to make improvements on them, you basically started almost from scratch, and then there was no record of what you initially had. And folks have changed over the years, and we've all been caught in that sticky wicket where we really want that. How was it built initially? What was the intention and all that? So that's where we're going right now. We're going to probably be building out anything. Well, we'll definitely be building out new stuff, but we'll probably be also getting our initial documents that we have here and there into it, and start structuring better, kind of put a process around the collection of requirements is what we're going to do. We're going to define a process for that. We don't have a well-defined process. We just have a way of doing it. And then once we get to that point, then we'll go beyond ServiceNow's development and the things we control to the requirements gathering for other tools. Say this is how we do it, and try to, sell it along the way.
You just sort of tweaked my memory here. And actually, I was going to jump in with the same comment with Jeremy earlier. Jeremy said something earlier about he'll sit down and document the process. And one of the things, I'll ask the panel this, one of the things I think works well is, you look at all your different users, you look at the user community, the business community, they're not process design specialists. They really don't understand how to conduct a workshop and how to pull together the requirements and map out the process and ask the right questions. So we didn't talk about this in the rehearsal for this panel discussion, but what are your thoughts like on a process like a center of excellence that does basically the hard work of designing, documenting, maintaining, but just be that liaison with the business stakeholders, the process owners, and in assisting them with it? Is that something that resonates with you folks?
For me, this is Sarah again. That is something we definitely do. So there is actually a certification out there that it's the CPDE Certified Process Design Engineer.
From ITSM Academy, I think.
Yes, and it is, if I plug something other than like I would plug Navvia to the ends of the earth. I've been a long time plug. Just for everybody's information, before Yale, I was a Navvia customer, and they turned my life around because I was a process designer before Navvia was around, and it was hard. And now Navvia's made it so easy. But yeah, just to kind of sell another little thing is that certification is one of the best trainings. I've had an over a 25-year career in IT, and it's one of the best trainings. And when it was time for me to pass the baton, and I think she might be on the call as a participant, to the next person on my team who's going to take over the processes, I said, you know, I'd like you to take this training. And she found it, she informed me that she found it just as useful. So I think that that is an excellent idea, that you need, just like you need technical writers, you need process designers.
Mhm.
And like they give you some guiding principles in that training. You know, the one that's always on the top of my mind that ties back to a lot of the conversations we had earlier is just enough process. You don't want to over define a process, because that's where you start having those conversations about there's too much overhead. So that should always be your mantra when you're designing a process. And you're right, people who don't design processes on a regular basis don't have that kind of foundational knowledge that you gain from doing it on a regular basis. So it's an excellent idea to have that skill set in your organization.
We just got some feedback from, it looks like Nakina, who said that this PDE course was amazing. So I don't know if she works with you or.
She does, yes.
But the other, and I just got a note here from Christy. She'd be interested in seeing how we're helping clients guide, how we're guiding clients into capturing requirements. So I'll make a note, Catherine, if you could just take that down, we'll get back to Christina on that as well. All right, so, you know, this has been an amazing conversation. We'll just keep going for a few more minutes. You know, one of the things that I've seen in a lot of initiatives, and that article, I believe that Catherine put it in the chat, why digital transformations fail. Scope creep is another reason digital transformation initiatives fail. So how do you folks go about minimizing scope creep in the work that you do? Maybe I'll start with Ericka.
Yeah, so minimizing scope creep, one of the main things that we here at the Knights of Columbus try our best to make sure that everyone that needs to be involved is involved, right? Because we've had situations where not all of the right stakeholders are involved, right? When we're capturing requirements, or even lack of right user involvement within capturing those requirements. And if we don't have the right people involved, clearly understanding what the full scope of the project is, we could have run into an issue where we have to make a change that ultimately affects the delay of providing that service or application to our customers. So we try to collaborate closely with our users. If we find an issue, we try to raise it right away, when it happens, and not wait to the end. And one of the things that we have, one of the approaches that we've been working is trying to take an agile approach where our organization is very immature in many practices, and we've been very accustomed to taking that waterfall approach, where we kind of wait to the end, to identify the issue. So trying to find, take that agile approach to build the minimum viable product, and engage with our customers, iteratively has helped us catch problems up front, and be able to tackle that early on, rather than towards the end of the project. And we actually recently had an IT customer journey mapping session with our business stakeholders, and that was something that came up. The perception of our customer was that we tend to wait till the end, to come up, to let them know and notify them of any issues, or maybe a missed requirement, where we find that working with them iteratively and engaging them up front and tackling those issues as soon as we identify them has definitely helped build those relationships and minimize, right, that scope creep. So,
this time went really faster today, and I think we could probably spend another 3 hours
I
talking.
know.
But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give each of you a chance just to wrap up. Also, just to let everyone know, the recording will go out. And if you guys don't mind, I'll share your contact information so that people, if they feel like asking you some questions directly, either through LinkedIn or whatever, is that fine with you folks?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So let's start with Jeremy. Jeremy, would you mind just your final thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, so I think having a clear defined scope with the business stakeholders, process owners, process managers up front, like what's the process start, what's the process end. Navvia has that scope option field in the details of the process that you're actually working on, and I use that a lot just with process start, process end. And then kind of what Sarah was hitting at and Ericka mentioned as well is design using best practices and design for 80%. 20% is handled as exceptions. The 20% is really where a lot of the scope creep can come into play, because you can get people that ask they say, well, what about this? Or what about that? They leave no stone unturned. So having a parking lot to be able to put that information somewhere, and maybe it gets to a point where you talk later on and you just need to adjust the scope a little bit, but you're taking it offline and having that consultation with the stakeholders and maybe the process owner to get that valuation and everything. But that to me is how we really minimize scope creep.
Great. Any final thoughts just on the topic today, Ericka?
On this topic here, or just in general?
As we're going to wrap up in a moment.
No, this is all great, and this is definitely where, right, the Knights of Columbus is. This is the space that we're in right now, right? So all of these topics are topics that we're actually living in today. So it's having our processes defined and being able to have a tool. Sorry, can you guys hear me? Oh, sorry, it feels if I got a lag, but just having, right, our processes defined and having a tool like Navvia that allows us, right, to make sure that we have all of the elements defined and identified and have the right stakeholders. It's key to success, right, and in the future.
Hey everyone, we're back. Sorry for those technical difficulties. We had some audio issues, but we're also at the top of the hour, so I'd like to start wrapping up today's conversation. But before I do that, I want to give a very special thank you to our guests. You guys did a fabulous job and you really moved this discussion forward. So a special thank you to Jeremy Hoffman from ChristianaCare, to Ericka Rivera from the Knights of Columbus, and also to Sarah Beardsley from Yale University. Once again, you did a fabulous job. So before I wrap up, I'd like to give you a little information on our company. So we are Navvia. We started our journey as a business process optimization company. We created the Navvia Process Designer as an internal productivity tool, and it really helped us be much more efficient at the design, documentation, and implementation of processes. Fast forward a number of years, we've decided to leave consulting behind, and now we're basically focused 100% on our product. So the Navvia Process Designer has some really great features. It can really help you improve the process design, documentation, and sharing of your processes, all in a central repository. It also helps you capture and map user stories and requirements to your process, which will improve your chance of optimization or automation success. We also have capabilities around assessment and governance, so you can always look for the gaps in your process and ensure your processes are being followed. And we packaged that together with a whole host of templates. These templates are detailed process starter kits that you can use to really accelerate the design and the implementation of your processes. You bring all that together and we have a very valuable product that can help you save significant time and money in the area of business process design, documentation, requirements, gathering, and implementation. If you're interested in learning more about the Navvia Process Designer, you could reach out to us. We'd be happy to schedule a deep dive demonstration for you and your team. All you have to do is contact us at navvia.com/contact. You could also start a free trial with the product, and you'll see when you go to the navvia.com website, there's a button up in the corner that allows you to register for a free trial of the product. So I mentioned we do have some upcoming events. So far on the schedule, we have 3 more webinars planned for this year. The next one that's going to happen on May 11th is how to design and document your processes to drive efficiency and reduce costs. On the 17th of August, we're going to be talking about the value of a process maturity assessment and how that can help you establish a baseline and identify process gaps. And on November 16th, we have key factors for digital transformation success. So registration will be opening soon for these webinars. So once again, I want to thank you all for attending today's presentation. We look forward to having you join future webinars. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out to us at navvia.com/contact. Thank you and have a great day. Bye for now.